all happens. And this year it's in Green Bay. Round 1 is in the books of the 2025 NFL Draft.
I like New Orleans a little bit.
That felt good.
Yeah.
That felt good.
Yeah.
This
Ian
weather
Orlovsky,
does
Ryan
not feel
Clark,
good.
Mina Kimes, Marcus Spears, Adam Schefter, Field Yates, Peter Schrager will join us throughout this hour as well. We still got another hour of NFL Live, getting you ready, of course, for rounds 2 and 3 tonight and the rest of the draft. There's a lot to get to here, and let's begin with Shedeur Sanders and what we saw last night, of course. One of our top stories. He was not selected in the draft last night in the first round. Much to come on where we think he could end up tonight, how it could end up maybe being better for him in the long run. Shedeur addressed his draft party after the first round.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, anything possible, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is, of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
All right, so Adam, we've talked throughout the first hour of our show about potential landing spots, but maybe people didn't tune in. And either way, let's reset that. What do you think could happen tonight for Shedeur?
I think anything's possible. I think where I would start is where we left off last night. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't have a second-round draft pick. They're picking 83rd in the third round. Now, is Shedeur Sanders going to slip through the second round back to another turn around with the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't dismiss that. Now, look, anything's possible here. For all we know, the Cleveland Browns have 2 of the first 4 picks. Maybe they decide they could afford to roll the dice with Shedeur Sanders. I don't think anybody knows. Everybody's already passed him up once. Yeah. Teams with quarterback needs have passed him up once. There are other teams that have quarterback needs that are said not to be interested in him. So it's going to take somebody that's got a high grade on him, somebody that's willing to roll the dice.
Yeah.
It could be anywhere as late as the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 83.
It will be compelling to see what happens tonight. Before we get to the potential ideas of teams, Dan, there's so much negativity maybe around Shedeur. I'm not even sure that's fair right now. Remind us what he does well and what whoever team picks him is getting out of him.
Yeah, I still believe that the player on tape is a second-round player. He's a second-round talent. He's a second-round ability when you see the things when it comes to the ability to see and play in rhythm and timing and fit the balls into windows. This is the timing, rhythm, ball placement. That's his skill set. In breaker in the middle of the field. Backer widens a little bit. This is a tight window now, but he goes 1, 2, 3. Ball comes out on time, and it's placed in between 3 guys. That's a real throw, but that's when he's at his best, when he plays with that timing, rhythm, and ball placement. Seeing downfield, those red spaces are the softness of the defense. That's where you want to try to attack it. The windows, and again, I will reiterate, once that safety closes, that ball's out on time. That's in rhythm. That's 30 yards downfield. This is when he's at his best. And while he's not this ridiculous athlete, there are glimpses of hit out of it. He's not a statue. He's not just a standstill, 6 flat type of guy. So third round feels like a stretch to me. I felt like first round was a stretch. Third round feels like a stretch. I think he's a second round pick tonight, and I still believe the Raiders make sense.
Mina, where would you like to see him go?
I like the Saints. I think, I didn't like them taking him in the first round. I said that. But they did what I wanted them to do in the first round, which is they bolstered the line of scrimmage, the trenches. They took an offensive lineman. That was a real problem for them. Now they're better situated to bring in a rookie quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. I also like the Saints because they need a guy who can play immediately. And I think outside of Tyler Shuck, of the remaining quarterbacks, he is certainly the one you can put in your lineup.
About the Saints. And I love Kellen Moore. I know Kellen Moore. He's like one of the nicest people you ever meet. I do think it's a fair conversation for the Saints to have. Do they feel that Kellen is strong enough personality-wise to handle a strong personality in Shedeur? I think that's a fair conversation that has to be had.
I will say this, though. Like, he was just coaching Jalen Hurts. And though his personality is different, I've talked to Jalen plenty enough times to know that he's a grown man.
Yeah.
To know that he's an adult. To know that he wants things done a certain type of way. And if Kellen Moore can handle conversations with adults, then Kellen Moore should be able to handle Shedeur Sanders. I think we have to realize that Deion Sanders doesn't get to walk into whatever building Shedeur Sanders walks into daily. Shedeur Sanders got to walk in there by himself. And Deion Sanders can't call and get Kellen Moore on the phone, because if Deion Sanders is speaking for Shedeur Sanders, he can't go lead a locker room full of fathers.
Right.
And so to me, it's not a question about whether or not he can deal with him as a person. It's about, can you have an adult conversation with a man that's supposed to do a job professionally? And if he doesn't do that job professionally, guess what? He ain't a first-round draft pick. He doesn't have to be here any longer. If the film says you can be a starting quarterback for me, and we feel we can build an infrastructure around you, I'm not about having this conversation of, is your personality strong enough? Because if it's not, you should not be a head coach in the NFL.
I need a fan. Where the collection plate at, man? Listen,
It's too cold for a fan.
I'm gonna move on to teams. Like I just said, I think Cleveland should take a shot. Here's 2 reasons why I think Cleveland should take a shot. One, because I think Shedeur is a good quarterback. I believe that. And I've seen what they've been able to do in Cleveland with quarterbacks and the progression. And this is still a team that wants to be a line of scrimmage, run the football, play action, push it down the field. That's one of the issues. The other reason why I think so is because you're so tied into money. A rookie is all that can save you. Right? You don't have money to go get Kirk Cousins. You don't have money to go get Aaron Rodgers with what those dudes would demand. Any free agent that we talking about, you probably don't have enough money to do it, Shefty.
But don't you think they would have taken him last night then?
No.
Because
Cleveland,
they felt like they didn't have to,
No,
right?
they didn't see the value there. I think they envisioned this, and they made the trade to where, and this gave them flexibility. They've got double ones in 26 in a better quarterback class. And I think that they'd rather, we'll see tonight.
That's my point,
I think they'd rather allocate their resources to a quarterback next year and pick the good players this year.
And
that can help.
Go ahead, Boogie.
You know, what do you think about the Jets? Because we brought them up earlier.
Team that nobody's been talking about this entire draft process. So little coming out of the Jets. It's such a strange sensation. Now we're at a point in the draft where it does make sense to me. Justin Fields is the starter. He's not really making starting caliber money, right? So while he is going to start, it's completely reasonable in my mind for them to bring in any young quarterback. And Shedeur Sanders at this spot in the draft, that's value.
Yeah, I would agree with the Jets. I like the Jets. I just don't know with Aaron Glenn and the way they've built their offensive line and Justin, are they going to sit there and say the second-round pick at a quarterback is going to be worth it for them rather than trying to get a different type of talent or player?
And let me also say this, Mel does a phenomenal job. We talk to people throughout the league. What if by any chance these teams didn't have a first grade round on it? I mean, a first round grade on it.
Well, that's obvious.
I think that's
no, but what I'm saying is, the discourse has created some kind of idea that he was supposed to be off the board at 3-9 or 21. Right? Like, that's what we talked about. But the teams obviously showed that last night. But ultimately, people are still stuck on, well, he didn't go in the first round. Well, what if they didn't have a first-round grade on it?
Right.
Yeah, I think
plenty of great quarterbacks have come out of later rounds.
I think his disappointment was that he believed he should go.
Yeah.
And every player should feel like that.
And that's going to be great for his future, hopefully.
Yeah.
Adam, final word. Did you have something?
Well, I always say with quarterbacks, it doesn't matter where you're picked in the draft. It matters a lot more where you go to as an organization, and Shedeur should find that out tonight.
All right, Sanders, by the way, led the nation in completion percentage last year, just back to the original point of some of the good. The Giants took for a watch, but there's a lot more to get to as we welcome you to NFL Live. Adam Schefter, Marcus Spears, Mina Kimes, Ryan Clark, Dan Orlovsky, Field Yates, and Peter Schrager join us throughout. Dan's been really cold. He took off his other jacket.
Why am I the only?
He's wearing it as a blanket right now.
Nose runner?
Doing okay, bud?
It's not that bad.
All right, y'all.
You build a character down there.
I reserve the right to be cold later, though.
I'm putting this jacket on next segment.
Adam, what can you tell us about Shedeur tonight and potential landing spots that we could expect?
Well, first of all, when we look at the teams that would consider him, I think the Giants obviously preferred Jackson Dart. I think the Browns preferred Jackson Dart. I think the Saints absolutely preferred Jackson Dart. Tyler Shuck is going to figure in there tonight, and I won't be surprised if Tyler Shuck goes ahead of Shedeur Sanders tonight. Can you imagine if Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck both wind up being drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders? I think there are not a lot of teams that love the idea of drafting Shedeur. And I think now we're at the point where unless he goes in the third round, number 83, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had a discussion about him on the board at number 21, I think we may get a team that we never connected to him. And I don't know what team that is, but I'll give you some examples right now. And again, I'm just hypothesizing. A team that has him high on their board that never thought he would be available in round 2, the Seattle Seahawks, the Arizona Cardinals, and, hold on to your head, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not telling you any of these teams are going to take him. What I am saying is that
He's holding his head.
it will not surprise me if all of a sudden the team that takes him tonight is a team that we just didn't even connect to him and had him high enough on the board that when he was available at their spot, they couldn't pass him up.
Sorry to call an audible. Can I throw out a team? What about the Jets?
The Jets.
Jets make sense.
nobody's
You
good
could
one.
justify the
Not the
Jets. Yeah, you could
Okay.
justify the Jets.
We're going to leave this here. This is a massive teaser for what's coming on later in the show. We're going to talk a lot about Shedeur, potential landing spots, and also remind you what he does really well. We've got some tape on that. Here's a look at the Blockbuster trade, though, on Thursday night. The Jaguars trading up to number 2 to get the two-way star Travis Hunter. They gave the Browns the 5th overall pick, which Cleveland used on defensive tackle Mason Graham, the number 36 overall pick, a 4th rounder this year, and a 2026 first rounder. Molly McGrath caught up with Hunter after he was picked. Listen to this.
Travis, Jacksonville traded up to get you. What's your reaction to how all of that unfolded?
I mean, they ain't talking to me since the combine, so I'm super excited to be able to go back home and be able to play for an organization that thought I was worthy of trading up and getting.
Adam, how did all this come together?
This was a trade that had been in the works for 2 weeks. This was a trade that essentially was agreed to, in principle, days in advance. This was a trade that I think both teams felt would help one another. The Jacksonville Jaguars felt they were getting the best player in this draft. And I don't think the Cleveland Browns loved the idea of trading away the ability to go pick Travis Hunter. But they also recognized that the haul of draft picks that they were going to be getting back in return put them in position to get Mason Graham in this draft, have a second round pick in this draft, and have Jacksonville's first round draft pick next season.
Marcus, what did you think, though, about the Browns trading out of the opportunity to get an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter?
Look, man, we won't know this until we see Mason Graham, and if he becomes a really good defensive tackle. Y'all know how I feel about interior guys in this league, how important they are. And also, what does that first-round pick in 2026 materialize to be for them, right? And then you think about, because the thing that was hard for me was you drop 3 spots to not take a guy that can be a 10 to 12 sack guy this year. Like I would almost bet my house that Abdul Carter will be an impact player and be a nuisance getting after quarterbacks this year. And a lot of people are going to look at that and remember that trade from Cleveland. And if Mason Graham not playing at a high level, they're going to say, well, we could have had this guy at number 2. Now, I get it. I get what you got in compensation. I get what the future may hold for you. But this particular year, I hope Mason Graham has a level of production to help people realize that this was the best decision that Cleveland made, because Abdul Carter is going to have an elite level of production.
Yeah, I think number one, I'm thankful that Jacksonville had the courage to take Travis and play him on both sides of the football. I think the NFL should be very thankful of that. Brown-centric, I just don't know if you got enough. I know a lot of people believe that the Jags gave up a ton. I don't know if the Browns got enough.
On the point system, the Browns got 2,000 more points than the Jaguars should have given up.
But we're also talking about a player that I don't know if we've seen ever before in the NFL.
Well, that you can debate.
So like, that's
the conversation is it enough for the player? Is it enough for the person you were giving up, or you were giving up the opportunity
more than just the slot?
More than just the slot of 2.
Yeah, and I do appreciate for the Browns' perspective, we do have to see what happens with 33 and 36 tonight, because